So today we'll be looking at the place of critical thinking in doctoral research. This is a very important module that we need to jointly look together. Permit me not to just to put on my video for 2 seconds, and then you also allow me to kindly put it off so that because of the internet connectivity. So here's the little boy that is saying hello to all of you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Uja Agumbiade. I'm in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, and I'm also co-coordinating this course with our able provost and deputy provost. So this is me from this end. Thank you, everyone, and welcome you again on board. This slide itself was done using Gamma, which is a free. It requires subscription, and I know Professor Wule knows better. But this version that I'm using is the free version, and so it's one of those tools that are available for us as researchers to also aid our productivity. And as Professor Wule will also be mentioning it to us later at the end of today's presentation. We'll also be having another session on Friday that we are inviting all doctoral candidates to come on board for that presentation. So we'll be looking at critical thinking in doctoral research. Uh, Critical thinking stands one of the cornerstone of doctoral education and is fundamentally intertwined with the entire research process. So there's no way that you can embark on a doctoral journey, on a doctoral research, without you putting on your critical thinking lens. I know for some of us, we may perhaps be coming into this program for the purpose of perhaps you just want the degree, you want to add to your title, and then you also want to see how uh, the PhD title can be behind your name. For some, it could be because of that personal dream, personal desire that you also want to have your doctorate degree. For some, I know it could also be because of promotion or because of circumstances around them. Irrespective of the motivation of the intention for enrolling in the doctoral program, critical thinking is the cornerstone in which the journey itself is anchored on, because it's fundamental to the entire research process. Our research ideas, our thoughts, our story, whatever that we are doing, it's fundamentally connected to critical thinking. And so the PhD being the highest level of academic qualification, it's inherently an exercise in developing and demonstrating critical thinking skills. So whether this is obvious to us at the inception of our program or not, it's inherently an exercise that has to do with critical thinking skills. And when we look at the journey through doctoral studies, it's not just merely about accumulating knowledge or completing a research project. Rather, it's about transforming oneself into a researcher that is capable of independent analysis, rigorous evaluation, and meaningful contribution to the academic field. And don't be surprised when at every point in time you are stopped or perhaps interrupted by anyone listening to you. And then the question is put to you. So, what exactly is the doctorateness in what you are doing? Because the expectation is that being the highest level of academic qualification. So it's not just about you embarking on a research project or having additional degrees, but it's more about you as an individual, as a researcher, engaging in something that will rather bring transformation first to yourself as a thinker as a researcher, and then also making meaningful contribution to humanity, to the academic field, and to humanity in general. So whatever we are then thinking of as doctoral candidates, we expect that our research ideas, our research intentions will be embedded in a process that will not only be significantly meaningful to us, but will also be significantly meaningful to others, even those outside our field. This may not be achieved at once in a single doctoral research, but the expectation is that whatever you are doing as a doctoral candidate, the importance of it should definitely transcend you as an individual. And so when we talk about critical thinking, this is a skill, this is a disposition, this is a culture that should transcend even the doctoral program. So the importance of this cannot in itself be overstated. So when we look at research and problem solving, which is the core of doctoral studies, because first and foremost, we are not embarking you are not expected to embarking on any doctoral research or doctoral journey if the whole essence of what you are doing is not going to add significant importance to the field of study. It's also not going to add to humanity. If these questions are not clearly answered, if your intent, the output, the overall essence of the doctoral studies that you are doing is just to add to your own certificates or perhaps to just add to your title, then it's not something doctorate the way it should be. And so, as students, as researchers, as doctoral candidates, as we progress through our research studies and navigate through the different stages of our PhD project, there are milestones, there are mechanisms that have been put in place also by the university to ensure that this critical thinking component is in itself made overt. So when you look at the concept of critical thinking itself is fundamental rooted in the concept of argumentation, because argumentation and reasoning. And so that's why we are laying the foundation of this interaction by focusing our attention on critical thinking.
He's speaking.
Because there's no way you can say that you are a doctoral candidate or you are doing a doctoral program without you anchoring your research on a particular logic of reasoning. And so it's all about argumentation and reasoning. And so doctoral studies centers on reasoned argument, and it also requires evidence to substantiate and then defend theoretical positions. Whether these theoretical positions are clear enough for you as a researcher to also see this or not, the 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 question of interest to you uh will definitely have some theoretical assumptions, whether this is adequately accounted for in terms of the way our thesis in our different disciplines are structured or not. Okay. And critical thinking is anchored on some core skills that are six in number. And so you see the skill of interpretation, the skill of analysis, the skill of inference, evaluation, explanation, and self-regulation, because these are part of those skills that we as doctoral candidates, we must imbibe, we must have irrespective of where we are coming from, because they represent the core skills that will form the competence that we need to work and enable us as doctoral researchers to engage deeply with our subject of interest, whether you are in biology or you are in physiotherapy or you are in pharmacy or you are in computer engineering, computer software, history, sociology, accounting, or business administration, public admin, law, dramatic art, you just name it. Despite all this compartmentalization that we have based on our disciplinary orientations and and body of knowledge, you find out that these are core skills that we all need as doctoral researchers for us to be able to allow us to go beyond the level of being a master in our study, in our disciplines, to then be a doctor of philosophy holder in our respective disciplines. So when you look at these core six competency skills, interpretation, for instance, allows you as a researcher to understand complex concepts and data. This also cannot be overemphasized because as a doctoral researcher, you are probing beyond, scratching beyond the surface to then look at deeper issues relating to the concepts that are key. By concept, we are going to unpack a number of these as we move on in this course, because for every doctoral research that you are working on, in building a body of knowledge, in building a body of explanation, there are basic minimum terms that you will use in form of concepts. And so interpretation allows us, when we possess these skills, it allows you to then see beyond the surface, to also see beyond what is popular, or perhaps even challenge what is popular, for you to get a deeper understanding of the subject of interest. And by interpretation, we it leads us to be able to do a kind of analysis that would then be meaningful beyond what is then obvious or physical to us, as far as the subject of interest is concerned. Because at the level of analysis, as a doctoral researcher, it enables us to break down problems into component parts. In our next topic, where we'll be looking at conceptual skills building, we see that there's a need for us to also be able to unpack even some of those assumptions that we have as far as our research question or research topic is concerned. This again will also be unpacked in in our subsequent classes. There's a clear difference between a topic of interest and a question that is of interest to you as a doctoral candidate. So analysis helps to break down problems into those component parts, whereas inference as a skill gives you the opportunity to draw conclusions based on evidence. Because what the doctoral research helps us in doing is it helps you in building a body of knowledge that can challenge methodological issues, theoretical issues, policies and practice in your subject area. Okay, so whether what you are doing is more of the abstract and the theoretical contributions, or perhaps it's challenging methodological traditions and assumptions in your field of knowledge or in your topic of interest. The expectation is that you'll be able to make contributions in these diverse directions, and that also represents part of what um, it means when we talk about the doctorateness of your doctoral research, because inference then permits you to draw conclusions based on evidence, whereas evaluation as a skill allows you to assess the quality and the validity of arguments and research, because you are not just looking at what others have done. You are not just coming into the conversation that is going on around your topic of interest, and in particular your research question, but you are coming in to then evaluate what is available as far as the topic is concerned, as far as the question is concerned. Part of what we also be expecting from us at the end of today's meeting is for us to also retrospectively look at, okay, so what am I doing? If you have an idea in terms of your research question already, which again, when you look at the mechanism or the process in place, prior to your admission, prior to you coming on board, you were asked to submit a concept note or a research idea. I know that, again, the way we think, the way we also reason as humans, it might not also be very clear when you are conceptualizing that. So this course again gives you an opportunity to be able to reflect on what you have in mind in terms of your research idea, your research topic, and what you are actually proposing as your doctoral thesis. And so this again gives the opportunity. By the time you then look at the quality and the validity of argument and research that is available, it gives you the opportunity to then take a more informed position. And so it's a skill that we should constantly aim at improving ourselves on, and it's a skill that we need to constantly see how we can enrich ourselves on. And so that has to do with evaluation. And so when you also look at explanation as a skill, please, for those of us that are just joining, part of our grand rules in terms of our ethics is to ensure that as you come on board, you mute yourself so that you don't then also disrupt our meeting. Please, let's try as much as possible to also respect the rights of others. And so I'm looking at the fifth skill, which is a core skill that is expected of us as doctoral candidates in our doctoral journey. And that has to do with evaluation as a skill. The evaluation as a skill is something that will allow us to assess the quality and validity of arguments and research. Because without that skill, without our skill to evaluate, we will lose a sense of the information that is available before us because we'll not be able to really take an informed position because you will be easily dissuaded by the volume of information, by the soundness of arguments around you, if you are not able to take that stand to also go beyond what is obvious to look at the arguments that is coming before you as far as your topic of interest is concerned, as far as your question, a research question is concerned. The sixth, the fifth skill, which is not in any way inferior to evaluation, is explanation. Again, explanation gives us the opportunity to communicate our research findings clearly. And this is an area that we also realize that a number of doctoral candidates also struggle with, which is also not, it's not a big problem because writing itself can also be very challenging. But then again, it's also a process, and there are basic rules that we also need to follow and then ensure that we maintain these as we progress as doctoral candidates. We need to maintain this and progress as doctoral candidates because if we are not able to communicate effectively our research ideas, then the research that we are embarking on will also not be meaningful. And so, even when you find out that it's a bit difficult for you to communicate clearly, this can be an area that you need to improve on. And if you then look at self regulation as an essential skill for us as doctoral candidates, self regulation gives us that opportunity as a researcher to monitor and then also improve on our own thinking process. Because for a doctoral candidate, the expectation is that you will only be guided by your supervisors. We see later as part of the mechanism that have been put in place to build critical thinking skills in us as doctoral candidates going through our doctoral program here at the Obafemi University. But the self-regulation is an essential skill that allow you as an individual to monitor and to also improve on your own thinking process because you are not just listening, you are not just looking at the literature, you are not just reading through the literature, but you are engaging the literature. And so when we talk about engaging the literature, it includes a combination of all these skills that we are looking at now. We also talk about you conceiving your research idea. It also includes a combination of all these skills, okay? Interpretation, analysis, inference, evaluation, explanation, and self-regulation. Because if any of this is missing, the doctorateness in what you are doing will then also have a big question mark. Okay. And that's why critical thinking is very, very essential. And this cuts across all disciplines, all disciplines, all disciplines. Because for us as doctoral candidates, our ability to develop critical thinking presents a kind of unique challenges to us. And so even when we find it difficult as a doctoral candidate to demonstrate all these core skills and to also imbibe this culture of critical reflection and thinking critically at all times, that does not necessarily mean that it is not possible because this is what is expected as far as the academic rigor is concerned. So when you look at the difficulty of thinking critically, it's not something that just stems from the blues. It's something that started not from now, from the time that we started our programs and orders. And so, as doctoral candidates, this particular topic and this module is then again saying that there's a need for us to think carefully about the implications of what we read as doctoral researchers. There's a need for us to reflect critically on the information that is available to us, the information that we are assessing, the information that we are also brooding on as doctoral researchers. As you are conceiving your research idea, as you're thinking about your potential topic of interest, the expectation is that you don't just allow yourself to be overwhelmed by the volume of information that is accessible or available to you. But we are expected to develop and deploy this deep knowledge and understanding of the implication of what we are reading, the implication of what we are looking at, the implication of what we are seeing. Because as we are conceiving our research ideas, we can actually generate research ideas from different sources. It can be from your own personal experience, it can be from the experiences of others. It can also be from what is going on around in our society or the dominant discourse in your field, dominant practice in your field, dominant explanation in your field, dominant approaches in your field, and all this. And then the expectation is that we move beyond the everyday world, what is obvious to us, to then move to that level of philosophizing, to the level of that abstract level of thinking that would then say, yes, this is a doctoral research. And so, even though we struggle sometimes, based on our background and where we are coming from, which is not oftentimes an individual problem. It's sometimes a systemic challenge. And so the expectation is that you are still in terms of your research, must measure up to that rigor because once it's not there, then it is not there. And so transitioning from this level of just looking at information from a superficial level to that critical evaluation that doctorate research demands, it requires this deep knowledge and ability to also synthesize diverse ideas from diverse sources. And that's why when you also look at uh, as you present, as you go on with your research idea, you'll find that at every point in time, there are mechanisms in place, there are processes in place, and then questions will always be thrown at you. So if you look at what we have within the OAU system, we have the doctorate degree at the moment. Even in other climes where you have the doctorate degree and through publication or through experiment or breakthrough or all this, you still have mechanisms that have been put in place. I know sometimes some of us, for those of us that perhaps had our second degrees from here, for our master's degree, or either master's of science or MA or master of philosophy, sometimes you will grumble about the number of forms that you have in different levels that we are expected to fill. These forms are intentional and they are not just there to create unnecessary bottlenecks. Some of these forms are put in place to provide direction, to provide opportunity for peers, for experts in our subject area. And when we talk about subject area, sometimes we should not be tempted to think that in terms of subject area, the subject area must necessarily come from the specific disciplines that we are attached to. We can have the same subject that sociologists are interrogating, psychologists are interrogating, those in psychiatry may also be interrogating the same subject. And at the same time, those in computer science may also be interrogating the same subject. And that's why the norm now is now to talk in terms of interdisciplinary research, looking at the interconnectivity that exists across disciplines. The same subject can also be of interest to those in law. The same subject can also be of interest to those in history, to those in religious studies, to those in pharmacy, and on to those in nursing. If we think deep, you are likely to also see these borderlines that are not as obvious as the way we sometimes also think they are. And so these forms, these mechanisms, these processes, these steps are sometimes put in place by the system. They are intentional to ensure that this critical reflection is also embedded into a conceptualization of research idea. And so you have the supervisor playing a key role. And that's why in the wisdom of the university system, your supervisors at doctoral levels are expected to be experts and established scholars already in your area because one, the supervisor is not the one that will be writing the thesis for you, but the supervisor can easily see what you can see as a doctoral researcher because this is a path that this individual has crossed, has passed through successfully for a while. Okay, so when you look at the culture of critical thinking and what we are talking about now, the supervisors play crucial role in also helping you as a doctoral candidate to develop this critical perspective or critical thinking. Sometimes you may not like your supervisor, especially those of them who would painstakingly, even though it's an unrewarding support because the type, if you really want to look at the reward and the support that is provided by supervisors that are committed to the research of their doctoral candidate, uh, the financial reward is not there in terms of monetary reward, but the joy that you as a supervisor, you are being generative in the sense that you are making the journey of that person that is coming behind you to be less cumbersome than what you went through. And it's also a privilege. And that's why you see some supervisors acting as mentors, and some are also acting not just as mentor, but as critical friends. Some may not even appear to you as a friend. So the whole idea of having those forms and then having a supervisor or perhaps having co-supervisors like we have in some situations, these are measures, systemic measures put in place to help you as a doctoral candidate to develop this culture of critical thinking. So even though sometimes it might be difficult for some supervisors to be able to do this, but that does not necessarily mean that a supervisor is just there as a figurehead. And so when you look at the role that supervisors play when it comes to developing these critical thinking skills, this critical thinking culture, this critical thinking disposition. Is not a role that you can overlook, because research has also shown that supervisors can effectively make or perhaps mark a PhD candidate experience. We've had cases of supervisors who perhaps would not be acting as a mentor, who will not be acting as a critical friend, but they will rather act as a stumbling block. And that's why communication between the supervisor and the students is key to your success. That does not mean that you should then take your supervisor as your demigod. No, 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 no. You are supposed to engage your supervisors critically. And that's why the responsibility lies on you first and foremost. When you look at the other skill that we mentioned, we talked about self-regulation. Because if, as a doctoral candidate, you are not able to evaluate, to explain, and to also self-regulate, it then becomes more or less like it's whatever your supervisor says that then stands as final. No, you can contest whatever your supervisor is suggesting in a very respectful manner without necessarily disrespecting that person. Because the whole idea of doctoral research is about logic and argumentation, building argument and then challenging. Because we've seen in diverse fields that some students have challenged what their mentors or their supervisors are developed. We have a very good example in the field of sociology between Taco Parsons and Robert K. Menton. While Taco Parsons was able to develop a very well established and robust theory, Robert K. Menton, who happens to be his student, challenged that theory. That was what led to his fame and to his own popularity, without necessarily diminishing the popularity of his supervisor, Taco Parsons. Because the supervisor must model the students that they are supervising in a very sincere manner, in a very authentic manner. And a number of things will also come up in this course as we go into issues relating to ethics and orders. These rules are clear and they are supposed to be the way they are supposed to be, including how we have them in our books and how they are supposed to be implemented. But then each person must be able to play his or her role effectively. You first, as a doctoral researcher, you must be able to bring up ideas that will challenge even your supervisor to reflect critically and to also to be able to look at what you are doing as a doctoral candidate. Because if this is not done, then it becomes more or less like just having this person on paper who is not able to demonstrate or contribute meaningfully to your doctoral journey. So effective supervisors must take different approaches at different stages of the journey, because you can't if at the level of conceiving your research idea, the kind of supervision that you will require, the kind of support, the kind of interaction that you require will be different as you progress with your doctoral journey. In the early stages of your doctoral journey, the supervisor is more or less expected to provide that support as an expert in terms of technical support by giving you uh, asking questions and then giving you issues to challenges to help you reflect on your research idea. And it is this stage that supervisors are expected to provide more directive guidance, because this will help you as a candidate to structure your thinking and then establish your research trajectories in a manner that perhaps was not that obvious to you before now. Okay, because If the supervisor is not questioning whatever you are bringing and your supervisor is just approving good to go, good to go, good to go, good to go, and orders, this in itself will defeat the purpose of having the supervisor and the role of the supervisor in ensuring, in supporting the cultivation of critical thinking skills that we are looking at as far as this model is concerned. And then also in terms of cultivation, the supervisors are expected to deliberately develop these, okay, through ongoing mentorship and explicit instruction. Again, like I did mention, in terms of patterns, in terms of approaches, this may not be the same across all supervisors. But the point I'm making here again is that when you look at the role of the supervisor as far as the process and the mechanism put in place by the great university is concerned for your doctoral journey, that the supervisor is part of what has been put in place by the system to help you as a doctoral candidate to develop and to also enhance your critical thinking. Okay, critical thinking is what will also make you to go beyond the surface, to also look at what is before you and say, self-retrospectively, what am I missing? And thanks for the volunteers among us, those who also share their experiences. And you also see that for those of us that were patient enough to also follow through, it's not as difficult as we would perhaps have thought it would be. Then again, if we are also not getting it, we also mentioned that part of the skills that critical thinking is to help us do is to be able to evaluate. So we go back again and see what have I done, what have I missed, what did I miss, and then we can undo, and then you see that you end up smiling. So we just ended up by looking at the role of the supervisor. And then I also mentioned that there are certain mechanisms that have been put in place as far as this system is concerned to support us to ensure that our doctoral journeys are seamless. Okay. And one of those mechanisms in place is that of having a supervisor or co-supervisors being appointed to us as doctoral researchers, and that our co-supervisors and supervisors, they do some mentoring, they do some critical reflection on whatever we are presenting before them, and that the role of these supervisors and co-supervisors in helping us as doctoral researchers to acquire critical skills cannot be overemphasized, even though not all supervisors will also be playing this role overtly or perhaps in a manner that we expect them to be playing the role. But these are part of what have been put in place. And then I also mentioned that in this university, you have series of forms that some of us sometimes will even be asking, why all these forms? We see again why some of these forms are essential. They are not just there just to occupy space. They are not just there to make our lives miserable, but they are there as part of the mechanism in place to one, ensure quality assurance, ensure that we get what we need to get, what we sign up to get, because the doctorate degree is quite different from any other form of degree. And so if these steps and these measures are not in place, it's most likely that we may not be able to get the best out of what we have signed up for. The Moodle platform that we are using now also came about as a result of our own self-reflection as a team led by the provost of our great university. That can't we then make this our interactions beyond the Telegram platform? Let's move on to more sustainable more inclusive platform that can also accommodate, including taking of attendance. And so we are experimenting with what has been in existence before now. So critical thinking helps in also challenging what we are doing. How can we improve on what we are doing? It helps us to challenge our thinking. Oh, this is what I've been thinking of in terms of my research idea. Oh, this is my research question. And then your supervisor can then say, oh, why not think about it this way? Okay. Why not look at it from this point of view? Or perhaps you just pick up an article, a systematic review, for instance, or a scoping review, for instance. Please kindly mute yourself, whoever is that. Please mute yourself. Please
So when you
mute
say you are
yourself,
fine,
ma.
so
Mommy,
bad.
mute yourself, oh, please.
Okay.
Madam Adibola, please mute yourself.
I'll mute all now. Please try to unmute yourself again, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wule. Please, again, let's constantly remind ourselves that we are entering a platform, or perhaps we are in a platform where we have so many people on this platform listening to one person per time. It helps a lot. So I was saying that when you look at what critical thinking does, it helps in many ways in reflecting on ourselves, on our research journey, on our research questions, helping us to fine tune what we are working on, and that the system has put a process in place, a mechanism in place. And so part of what you are then doing now is to also see how we can enhance our critical thinking skills, because the usefulness of this also goes beyond a doctoral degree. And so when you look at the process that we are going through, okay, this process provides us with this support one way or the other by having a supervisor. You have committees at the departmental level and others who are expected to put in their own critical thoughts into what you are doing. And so, in a way, these mechanisms, this process, these programs, these initiatives foster a way of learning in an interactive manner. I know for some of us who have not been exposed to the Moodle platform, this program is also giving you this opportunity, and it's also an eye opener, especially for those of us that are in the academics, that, oh, there are so many flexible tools out there that you can also use in reaching out to thousands of students in a synchronic manner, in a manner that everyone can live manner, everyone can participate at the same time. And then you see have a number of things done like you will do in a physical meeting. These are parts of what critical thinking helps us to do. Okay, so when you also look at the different mechanism put in place, it allows you, even as a student, to also look at the stage at which you are conceiving your research work. It gives you the opportunity to look at what you are doing, and then gives you the opportunity to also discuss and share with your peers. Okay, when you are making your presentations, when you are uh, presenting your concept note and orders, it helps to do this. And then the proposal or your research idea is then moved away from the department to the level of the faculty. And so at the level of the faculty, you are not just restricting yourself to people within your department, but you are also comparing notes to those that are outside your department. And then outside your department, your research idea, through the different forms that we have, goes to the college, okay, where you have university-wide interactions. You have people coming from different faculties, from different departments, who would also look at what you are working on, and then they also make their contributions. So even though we may have some kind of skepticisms in this process and in this mechanism that has been in place, But if you look at the way this has been designed, remember I said that it is intentionally put in place. By we engaging with this mechanism, going through this procedure, going through this process, you see also that it leads to substantial benefits, including exposure to diverse methodological approaches and valuable peer learning that may not be available if this were not to be the way we are running things here. And that's why before you as a researcher can condemn and dismiss the usefulness of a particular information or mechanism in place, we are expected to do an evaluation and analyze what is before you. You can't just pick up a methodology, for instance, as you are thinking through your research idea and just stick to that methodology because it sounds so fanciful. No. Or perhaps you have expertise in that area. There must be a clear logic between your research question, your research idea, and the methodology that you are proposing. There must also be a clear engagement with the information that is available because critical thinking gives us this opportunity to be able to acquire this kind of reflection and then gives you this opportunity to also look at how then can I strengthen my writing skills and my ability to communicate my ideas. Because if you do not engage, there's no way you can also communicate. And so when you are also communicating, self-reflection, self-regulation again gives you that opportunity to even take a second look at what you are writing and what you are doing. What are we saying now? What I'm saying again is that fine, it might be a bit difficult for us to really see ourselves operating at the level in which the doctorate program expects us to be in terms of the doctorateness in our research ideas and in our research output. But that there are steps put in place. There are steps put in place. There are mechanisms put in place that allows us to do this. Okay. And it helps in a way to build our ability to work on research ideas. Just a minute, I noticed that my slide is hanging, and I'm not sure if you can still hear me clearly. Uh,
I can still hear you.
okay, but my slide is hanging.
Yes, sir. I can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Trying to see. Okay, so I was talking about the mechanism in place and then how this mechanism also help us in building priceless skills in terms of building priceless critical thinking skills by way of discussing our research ideas with our supervisors, with our peers, presenting at the departmental level, presenting at the faculty level, the faculty, the departmental committee, looking into our research ideas beyond our supervisors, the faculty committee and also looking into our research ideas in form of those forms that we fill and orders, and how this in itself increase the likelihood of us being exposed to diverse methodological approaches as well as learning, peer learning as peers. So when you look at the peer review support and the collaboration that we have within the university system in your journey towards achieving your doctoral degree, you realize that studying for a PhD can actually be a very isolating experience, okay? It can be a lonely journey, and that's why we are expected to see how we can converse, how we can share our thoughts, how we can also communicate our thoughts, and the support of other students and in other circumstances can actually be very, very critical. Because if you are just thinking to yourself alone and you are afraid of communicating your ideas or sharing your thoughts with others, maybe out of fear that someone may steal your idea, you may not be able to benefit from the kind of invaluable support that peers can sometimes also provide to you. Remember, we are talking about our quest for critical skills. How can we also ensure and acquire and sustain this in our doctoral journey? And so you are saying that by the time you explore the avenue of peer support and collaboration, this helps in a way to combat isolation so that the journey doesn't just become too lonely to you. It provides an opportunity for you to also share your thoughts, your feelings with others, just the way someone demonstrated also on this platform with us this morning. Okay. He has gone through the process seamlessly and he could offer support. And I had a few number of us also say, yes, I've got it because this peer of ours, this colleague of ours, provided that unsolicited support and it benefited us in resolving the challenge, while some did not benefit from it for one reason or the other. So in terms of our research topic, our research ideas, our peers can also provide this invaluable input into whatever we are developing. Again, it's also another avenue for you as fellow doctoral candidates to provide critical feedback on others' write-ups, okay? Because when we meet as a pool of doctoral candidates and we are able to compare notes and we are able to compare our thoughts, it gives our critical friends from diverse subject background to be able to also breathe and make a sense of what we are working on. Sometimes it might not just be them making a sense, but for even those questions that may seem stupid, foolish questions sometimes from them, and trigger your thought in a way, in a direction that you never thought of before now. But because you have again released and made your work available to other fellow doctoral candidates, this gives them the opportunity because at this point, you are not seeing them as someone that is far above you because you are all doctoral candidates. So it gives an opportunity for them to also do what? To give, take us or take from your thoughts and also give back to your thoughts. Okay. So again, peers and collaborations are ways through which we can also build our critical thinking skills. Mentoring, it's a very, very invaluable mechanism and experience that cannot be overemphasized. I remember benefiting strongly from a mentoring experience that I had with two individuals that volunteered to provide the support that I needed at that time while I was working on my own doctoral research. And I can tell you that to date, I still relish this experience that I had with these great minds. We never met physically. It was just through an online platform, and they provided this support that really enriched the quality of my research work and my doctoral journey. And in fact, it made the journey so seamless to me. Like I really had all that I needed, apart from the other forms of support that I also experienced while I was doing my doctoral program, including fellowships and others. So mentoring also, especially when it is formal, has a way of also fostering and enriching this process for us as doctoral candidates, including our ability to acquire the critical skills that we are talking about. Again, when we look at reflection and reflective practice, okay, one, deep thinking. Deep thinking involves consciously examining experiences and actions to learn lessons for future practice. Because without deep thinking, Without this reflection, this conscious examination of our experiences and actions, then we can learn lessons for future practice. So, as doctoral candidates, as doctoral researchers, the expectation is that at every point in time, we deploy deep thinking, okay, so that this can then help us to reflect on our experiences and improve on what we are doing and how to do it better. Reflection also, while doing, helps in shaping our actions in real time, okay? And then when we also reflect in action and reflection on action, which is evaluating after an event to learn from outcomes. Okay, I'm sure that the experience we had in between would also help us to reflect on our actions. You know, while we were doing it, we were able to reflect. After this again, it gives us the opportunity to also reflect. And this will also help us in looking at critical incidents, because when we use significant events to question our beliefs and draw on the literature for deeper understanding, at this point, we are already demonstrating what critical thinking represent. And when we move on to then put our thoughts and our ideas together, which is the critical stage in which we are now aligning those things that we have gathered from different sources, interactions with others, our thoughts, our dreams, our inspirations, our interactions with the society and others, with the literature, and we are bringing it back to reflect on our writing and thesis development, because for the PhD program here at OAU, you are expected to have your doctoral degree um, done by thesis, by monogram, in a monograph form, I mean. And so you are expected to begin your thesis writing from day one. And that is why the system says asks us to submit our research ideas in form of concept note. So if you have not had a chance before now to really look at that document, okay, please, this is an opportunity for you to go back and then start looking at what exactly are your thoughts and my action, because there'll be assignments. Let me just say this ahead of time. That will be placed, will be made available on the Moodle platform today. So you are going to see these assignments and activities are tailored towards helping us to clarify our thoughts and then to also reflect on our research ideas. Okay, so do not wait till you are in your second year before you start writing. Critical writing and thesis development starts from day one. Okay. And so it's also a more or less like an iterative action, because you go back and forth. You don't just start and then expect that what you have written today, that's the best. No, it's iterative. You keep on going back. You have to correct and cancel, clean and rewrite and orders. Okay. Because if you don't have continuous
Okay.
feedback and revision
Okay.
circles with your supervisors and with your peers and
Ah,
others, if you don't do all this, it will not in a way help you to develop a piece that is well written. And that's why, as doctoral candidates, we must not be weary of being corrected, because being corrected gives us the opportunity to reflect, like we said here, to reflect in action, to reflect on action. And then we can see the critical incidents, those outcomes that should be part of those things that we will celebrate as part of our achievements or our deliverables. And so again, there are so many platforms available, even within this journey, that you can explore and take advantage of in your quest for knowledge and in your quest for a doctoral degree. So it's something that we must engage in as doctoral candidates. Writing requires daily practice and it requires interaction, okay? And it requires you progressively refining each section of your doctoral thoughts, of your doctoral thesis, each section every day. And that's why when you take a look at this again, you have different different approaches that you can also follow, okay, because when you look at those that you can collaborate with, either your supervisor, your peers, uh people in your department, in your faculty, outside your department, outside your faculty, it helps in a way to shape your learning and your research. And this doctoral program provides you an opportunity for you to do that. But before you can benefit from this, you must also be systematic and be reflexive. Because when you are systematic and you do a constant reflection, okay, this will also impact on how you write. It will mirror, it will show, it will be obvious for others to also see that you are not just writing, you are not just engaging others, but you are also not engaging others because you want to take advantage of them, but you are engaging them in a manner that you are also adding value because you are not just coming to them to take, but you are bringing something on board to help others to also reflect on. And when we do this, as we do this, as we engage carefully, as we also choose how we write as a scholar, it helps because the kind of final product that you are going to come up with will be unique. And the doctorateness that we are then looking for will then be in your doctoral thesis. It's not a document that you then start asking the question, is this really a doctoral thesis? Is this really a doctoral write-up? Is this really a doctoral thesis? Is this really a doctoral write-up? Okay? Because that will have given you an opportunity to reflect again. And we can do all this by doing. And that's why we will be asking us to do a lot of readings and will also be asking us to do regular assignments because it is only when we do that we then improve. So if, for instance, after today's interaction now, you also do not go back again to interact with the module platform, and then you wait till the next time that you'll be having our lectures, then you are still likely not to have the kind of familiarity that you ought to have with that platform. The same thing also goes to how are we approaching our research question, research topic? How much of the literature around our topic of interest are we aware of? And part of what I may also be asking us to do today at the end of this interaction is to identify current research articles around your topic of interest. I mean current. And when we say current, I'm not talking about publications that have been out there in the last 5 years. I'm talking about publications that are just coming up between last year and now, 2024 and 2025. Yes, yes. I mean 2024 and 2025. Okay? Because when we do all this, it helps us as doctoral candidates. It helps us. It helps us a lot in terms of the level at which we are going to be abreast with emerging findings in our different disciplines.